All right, welcome everyone to the 2025 M.Dot webinar series. We are delighted to have you with us for what promises to be a very engaging and forward-looking conversation about the science and the art of building effective transdisciplinary research teams in today's rapidly evolving university research landscape. In today's session, we'll go behind the scenes on one of the most influential programs in digital health training, namely the NIH mHealth Training Institutes, or MHTI, as we call it. Over the past decade, the MHTI has served as a living laboratory for understanding how transdisciplinary collaboration unfolds in real time, how research teams form, grow, and sometimes face challenges, and what those experiences can teach us about building more sustainable and impactful partnerships for the future. We are very fortunate to have today Dr. Minjong Jeon. She's a professor of advanced quantitative methods at UCLA and who leads the assessment team assessing the MHTIs. Dr. Jeon is a distinguished scholar at the intersection of psychometrics, data science, and team science. Her research has pushed the boundaries on how we model human and social dynamics using very innovative computational approaches that show the hidden architecture of collaboration and learning. What I find particularly inspiring about her work is how she bridges the technical and the human, translating complex quantitative insights into practical guidelines for creating research ecosystems that are both rigorous and deeply collaborative. So with that, it's a great pleasure to turn things over to Professor Jeon.
Thank you so much for Dr. Shetty for your very kind introduction. Let me share my screen, entire screen. So good afternoon or good morning, everyone. My name is Minjong Jeon. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm from UCLA School of Education and Information Studies. I'm delighted to be here to share some insights from MHTI, the NIH-funded mHealth Training Institute. Over the past 10 years, we have seen firsthand how intentional training design, team science, pedagogy, and data-driven evaluation can transform early career researchers and the way interdisciplinary collaboration takes place. So today, I will show you what we have learned, both through running the program and also through the research we have conducted about the science of team science and how collaboration forms, what sustains them, and how they shape long-term scholarly trajectories. So why this matters? Complex health and behavioral problems simply can't be solved within disciplinary boundaries. Whether it's chronic disease management, digital mental health, or social determinants of health, these problems require the integration of medicine, data science, behavioral science, and engineering. So team science gives us the framework to do this, but it's not easy because teams must navigate differences in language, expectations, and even values. So the mHealth field is a perfect setting to study this because it lives at the intersection of these worlds. So what is mHealth? When we talk about mHealth, we are referring to mobile digital health approaches that use portable technologies such as smartphones, wearables, sensors to deliver care, monitor conditions, and improve health behaviors. But mHealth isn't just about technology, it's a social, behavioral, and clinical enterprise. It sits on the boundary between computing and medicine, between algorithms and human connection. That boundary space makes it an ideal testbed for studying team science in action. The MHTI is a multi-stage team-based training institute that brings together about 30 scholars each year from across disciplines and institutions. It begins with online webinars where participants practice collaboration. It begins with online seminars to establish shared foundations, followed by small sandbox sessions where participants practice collaboration in low-stake environments. Then everyone meets for an intensive in-person week, forming teams around capstone projects mentored by senior faculty. And finally, participants stay connected through ongoing virtual mentoring. It's intentionally structured to promote both knowledge exchange and relationship building. Here's today's roadmap. First, I will set the stage with a broader state of team science and its key challenges. Then I will look at the design and pedagogy of MHTI. Then I will dive into two empirical studies that we recently conducted. The first one examines how conversations, including small talk, predict collaborations among the scholars. The second one looks at the long-term scholarly outcomes using semantic analysis of publications. Then finally, I will close with integrated lessons and practical guidance for educators and program leaders. The state of team science. Team science is on the rise. Recent studies show that across the disciplines, the proportion of multi-author, cross-institutional papers has grown exponentially over the past 50 years. These collaborative works tend to have higher impact, greater citation reach, and a more societal relevance. But despite this promise, collaboration doesn't happen automatically. It requires infrastructure, shared language, and thoughtful pedagogy, something that MHTI set out to address. However, there are real barriers that limit how effectively teams function. First, disciplinary silos, differences in terminology, data norms, and methods. Second, power and participation imbalance. Junior scholars or underrepresented fields often feel marginalized. And third, a lack of relational trust. Without psychological safety, innovation stalls. Finally, sustainability. Teams form for a grant or paper, then dissolve quickly. Addressing these challenges requires not only training content, but intentional design of social infrastructure. Then what makes teams work? Successful teams balance two dynamics, informational and relational. Informational dynamics include shared knowledge, methods, and goals. Relational dynamics involve trust, mutual respect, and shared identity. Programs often focus heavily on the informational side, skills, methods, data sharing, but underestimate the relational processes that actually drive collaboration. So our work at MHTI has been to design training that supports both sides. Pedagogy of MHTI. Four pedagogical principles guide the MHTI. One, blended formats, combining virtual and in-person experiences to bridge geography. Two, sandbox learning, creating low-stakes collaborative environments. Three, capstone projects, requiring real outputs and shared accountability. Four, mentored diversity, pairing scholars with mentors outside their field. So together, these foster both scientific rigor and social connectedness. So MHTI isn't just a training program. It's a living laboratory because every interaction, team assignment, and publication can be tracked longitudinally. We can study how collaboration actually unfolds. This means we can test our hypotheses about communication, network evolution, and scholarly impact in a real-world, high-functioning environment. Now I'm moving on to our first study. In our first study, we asked, how do different types of conversations, research-related or social, can affect the formation of collaboration relationships among the MHTI scholars? We were particularly curious about the role of small talk. Is it merely social filler, or does it play a measurable role in building research connections? To this purpose, we tracked daily conversations among 30 scholars over 15 days using 7 assessment points during the 2023 MHTI. Each participant reported who they talked to and then whether the conversation was about current research, future collaboration, or capstone career topics, or small talk, which is non-research topics. We then apply the longitudinal social network model called the temporal exponential random graph modeling approach to analyze how conversation networks among the scholars evolved over time during the program. Then why small talk? Social psychologists talk about affective primacy theory. We are more likely to work with people we feel good around, not necessarily those who are most competent. So small talk about hobbies, family, or shared experiences can create that affective connection. So we hypothesize that scholars who engage in high-quality small talk would be more likely to form future research collaborations. So here are key findings. We found that in-person interactions strengthened research conversations, while online platforms supported casual social exchanges. Most importantly, the perceived quality of small talk significantly predicted future research collaborations. In other words, the better the social connection, the more likely that the pairs of scholars were to discuss research later on. So even factors like race, region, and age similarity influenced who talked to whom. These network graphs show how scholars' conversation networks evolve over the 15 days across the 7 assessment points during the program. So from early on, the earlier graphs show that the earlier interactions among the scholars are somewhat siloed. People stayed within their teams and disciplines. By the end of the training, though, the network became far more interconnected. And then I like to note here that it's the social connections or the small talk edges that breach across disciplinary boundaries. Here are key implications of the first study. These findings underscore that informal time isn't just optional, it's essential. Coffee breaks, hallway talks, even virtual happy hours can create the social glue that makes research collaboration possible. Programs that deliberately design for informal interaction, especially in high formats, can see stronger and more sustained collaborations. Moving on to the second study. Our second study asked, does participation in MHTI actually shift scholars' research focus over time? We wanted to see if the program's emphasis on interdisciplinarity leads to a measurable intellectual migration. That is, scholars moving toward health topics in their publication. To this purpose, we analyzed publication records of 176 MHTI alumni from 2015 to 2022, over 16,000 papers. Using large language models embeddings, dimension reduction using UMAP, and clustering methods, we mapped the intellectual space of their research. Through this, we identified 329 microtopics grouped into 14 broader domains of research, ranging from biomedical engineering to behavioral psychology. Why semantic mapping? Traditional program evaluation often relies on surveys and citation counts, but those measures may miss conceptual nuance. So as you can see from this map on the right-hand side, where dots, individual dots indicate publications and colors indicate topics that we identified, the semantic mapping allows us to visualize where scholars work intellectually and how that may shift over time. So in this version of the map, on the left-hand side of the on the left-hand side, the dots indicate publications, purple indicates mHealth research topics, and greens indicate non-mHealth topics. And the numbers 1 to 6 indicate 6 different areas of mHealth topics. So this map tells us that mHealth topics occupy a central bridging position in the research landscape, connecting different disciplines such as medicine, computer science, public health, and psychology. In this version of the map, where dots in darker blue indicates higher mHealth topic density areas. The darker blue is in here. And then we can see scholars' migration over time in this semantic space, where colored arrows indicate different disciplines of the scholars. And then from here, we can see that scholars migrate into the mHealth core regions over time. Specifically, we found that about 64% of the scholars shifted their publication focus toward the central mHealth region after participating in the MHTI program. And then those shifts persisted for at least 3 years. These results show us that structured team-based training doesn't just influence short-term collaboration, it can change scholars' intellectual trajectories. And also methodologically, it demonstrates that the AI-based semantic analysis can provide powerful insights into the long-term outcomes of training investments. This approach can also provide a replicable, data-driven framework for evaluating other interdisciplinary training programs as well. Integrating the evidence. Together, these two studies tell us a coherent story. At the micro level, small talk and social interaction build trust and collaboration intentions. And at the macro level, those relationships translate into sustained intellectual shifts in scholars' publications and networks. Team science thrives when we intentionally connect the human and the structural. This conceptual model summarizes the process. Small talk builds trust, trust fosters collaboration, collaboration leads to long-term publication network, which in turn reshape the intellectual landscape. So it's a virtuous cycle of connection and productivity. Lessons for program design. From a design perspective, this means 1. Programs should foster both informational and relational exchanges. 2. Hybrid formats can be used strategically. Online for accessibility, in-person for depth. 3. Evaluation can combine short-term network data with long-term productivity data. Practical guidance. Here are some recommendations for leaders. For educators and program directors, consider the following. Create structured opportunities for informal interaction. Support hybrid collaboration tools that extend beyond the training. Track not only products like papers, but also relationships and trajectories. And view team science as both pedagogy and infrastructure. For funders, this means investing in relational infrastructure, supporting the human side of science, not just data or technology. For institutions, it means creating spaces for interdisciplinary collision. And for individual scholars, it's a reminder, small talk is scholarly capital. Conversations build collaborations, and collaborations build careers. So to conclude, here are key closing takeaways. Team science requires both trust and knowledge exchange. Small talk isn't trivial, it's transformative. Intentional program design can reshape both career and fields. Thank you so much for being here and for engaging in this conversation about science of collaboration. Thank you.
MJ, thank you so much. The mHealth Institute has been a terrific testbed, and I see several of our graduates here. I'll open it up to the audience for reactions and questions.
Hi, Ryan, go ahead.
Hi, thank you so much. This was a fantastic talk. As someone who just went through the program, found these results very fascinating and also reflective of my experience. I'm just curious if you have any data on collaborations among scholars long term. Is that something that you looked into in terms of grant submissions, paper publications? Be very curious what you found.
Yes, we've been tracking the collaborations among the scholars, right? Among the scholars, and then we have been tracking their collaborations with other people, like outside their own fields as well. This paper didn't include those collaboration records, but yes, the overall, yes, collaboration sustained and expanded as well. Both in terms of papers and grants as well. And then that's something that we are working on right now. Again, these two studies didn't include those parts. But yes, that's a very important piece of information as well that we are focusing on too.
scholars? I'll do a follow-up on Ryan's question. Does the semantic centrality in your interdisciplinary landscapes relate in some way to research impact or of funding success? I know you have been following them longitudinally. MJ?
Yes. Yeah. Yes, we've been following them longitudinally, their grants, collaborations, and their success. The landscape there, yes.
No, I know that you are publishing you showed me a draft or a paper. So I'm just curious, you're doing your web scraping, your grad students have done web scraping of all the scholars who have graduated, and they're tracking the longitudinal temporal development and the networks as they form.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that we have developed actually a tool that we can automatically track these MHTI scholars publication records and grants, and then we actually look at the publications, the contents of the publications, and we apply the topic analysis and etc. But also the tracking of the productivity itself. So from there, we create the networks of collaboration, so the network graph. And then that includes the actual collaborations among the scholars and then how they change over time, but also the collaborations they can make in the future based on the topics that they work on. Because in this semantic space of topics, right, we can identify scholars who are work on similar areas, right, or neighboring areas, and we can see that, hey, those scholars, they work on similar topics together, then they can work together. Even though they are not working right now, they don't even know that they are working on similar topics. They can work together. So yes, that's something that we are working on right now with my graduate students.
To follow up also on that, with all these incredible changes happening almost daily, how do you see the use of large language models to trace, explain, and evaluate interdisciplinary networks and knowledge evolution? Any thoughts in that direction?
So the large language models are incredible tools, right? Like I said, so now not only just tracking the number of publications, right? So we can actually investigate into the contents of the studies as well, right? So that it can tell us like what each scholar actually studies, and like not only the title and abstracts, but we can actually study the entire papers as well, right? So then we can see which scholars, right, not at the superficial level, but at the actually the in-depth level, which scholars work on very similar or different topics. I mean, I'm sure all papers are different, right? But and then in what level they can collaborate together, and then
Yeah, I'm just curious. I see Kat and all who are there. Curious to see the use of like AI agents. Usually, much of this work is done by your grad students, and the use of AI agents to automate the whole process of collecting and tracking data and publications from our students. I know you're working on a platform. Do you want to
yes.
share some of what you're doing with that?
Oh, I actually haven't prepared. I should have.
No, you can just off. I shouldn't have. It's a very exciting platform. But just give us a high level view of where you're headed with.
Yeah, it's
Mhm.
a very exciting platform where so we are now tracking each scholars actually beyond MHTI as well. That's that we started with the MHTI scholars. We wanted to track each scholar's productivity, again, papers and grants and presentations and their patterns, etc. Their research productivity automatically. So based on their affiliation information and email, we track their publications again, the productivity. Now this platform can, we are aiming to, the platform can track any scholar, right? Again, their in terms of their research productivity. So the platform does everything automatically. So it tracks the publications, right? And then the topics, and then we locate each scholar in the semantic space of research as well. The maps that I showed you a little bit today, right? Where they are located, and then again, who they are similar to or different, right? Who they can potentially work together with. And then how their research changes over time. Another thing is that we can also not only track individual scholars' productivity, but also group of scholars' productivity as well. So within the program, we can compare, right, each cohort, right, the 2022, 2023, 24, etc. But also we can compare the groups of scholars in different institutions as well, right? And then we like to see the compare scholars in the similar position, right? Assistant professors in engineering field, right? For instance, right, in one institution, how those people can be compared to the assistant professors in similar fields, in similar departments, in different institutions and things like that.
Yeah, that would be very exciting actually, because for the longest time, from my first-hand experiences sitting on UCLA's committee that makes the final decisions on promotion and tenure, uh, initially we used to worship intellectual purity within disciplines, but that is being replaced by kind of this notion of team science, transdisciplinary scholarship. And so what you are doing, your semantic maps, will be very useful in actually quantifying it. So the evaluation becomes a much more quantitative and objective experience. So many of these next generation of scholars like Ryan, who truly are in a very interdisciplinary space and often, I suspect, have to justify themselves. What is it you do amongst all these computer scientists and physicians, and so these kind of maps showing how their scholarship grows and how it interrelates to people in different disciplines, and eventually the impact they're having, because I suspect your models will include any publications, tweets, and basically any write-ups on the scholarship, all of these which are not currently considered in academic appraisal. So in a whole holistic form, that would be very exciting. Uh, I curious, there are others who are also graduates from the MHTI, and I'm kind of curious to see their reactions and if they have any guidance on what your team could do to enable them uh, sharpen their dossiers as they go. I know Kat is in Europe at a very late hour, but curious if others have any other questions. All right, it looks like they've all. Sorry, did someone raise their hand? No. Oh, who's? Okay. MJ, any other thoughts you have, insights? You have been with this for many years, looking at these scholars, looking at their transcribing notes. Any other comments or insights you have that don't emerge through the papers you presented?
Yeah, so we are working on other papers, more papers, and MHTI is a very exciting program. The one thing that I want to say is that now, like for the social network analysis, we used to rely only on surveys. So we ask scholars to mark which scholars, other scholars you talk to, and then what are the topics and then how helpful they are, the nature of the conversations, and etc. So everything was based on surveys, but now we are collecting audio data as well. So we are working on so that we can understand the conversations, the nature of the conversations, how they evolve, right, among the scholars during the program in more authentic settings. So we are working in that analysis and very excited about it. So hopefully I can share the results next time.
Yeah, we want to bring you back next time because the platform that you're working on is very exciting, and I think it's directly relevant to the MHTI graduates, but also I think team science in general. So probably a working prototype and its demo. I'm privy
Yeah.
to it, but I think the general scholars out there need to be aware that there are sophisticated ways of quantifying the research and doing uh, comparisons with peers at other institutions who may have achieved tenure or beyond. And it's very easily done within a few minutes with your platform. So very exciting. And
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I thank
So
you. Sorry, go ahead, MJ.
no, I was gonna say yes. Ideally, eventually, hopefully, the scholars don't have to prepare their CV, right? Because using these programs that we can automatically anytime track your the productivity, right? The publications, and there are Google Scholars, but Google Scholars and other platforms, but they are not perfect. So we are trying to improve like to the precision, so that we can really closely, right? Almost perfectly, right? Track your productivity, publications, presentations, and grants, and then patents, and so that So I'm excited that hopefully I can share some prototypes in the near future with you.
We want to thank you, MJ, for this very thoughtful presentation. Thank you for coming and sharing some of the stuff and making providing a different dimension to the mHealth Institute that we all have been part of. So I want to also thank some of the audience and the scholars who are many of whom are graduates of the MHTI, and thank you all for attending.
Vivek,
And sorry,
sorry, this is Hannah
Hannah.
Fisher.
Hannah. Hi.
I had one question. Sorry to interrupt as you were
Oh,
wrapping up, but MJ, your comment about the audio recording reminded me about that feature. It sounds like you're just starting to dig into some of that data. Would you be willing to give sort of a primer on your research questions? What exactly do you think you'll be looking at in those data?
Yeah. So we are exploring right now. It actually took really long time to clean the data to make sure that we have data that we can trust, right? The transcribing itself is easy because the AI machines are out there, but now we want to double check, right? By human the transcribers, make sure that everything is correct. So it took almost an year to prepare the data. But anyways, so we are exploring the data right now. There are many directions that we can take, but one of the directions that we are thinking about right now is that we like to understand the team differences, right? How the teams they meet and then they discuss, right, every day, right, during the in-person training program, and then how the dynamics of the conversation, so how they change, right? Over time, we have morning session, afternoon sessions, and how those conversations unfolds basically, right? So we are looking at just we are not looking at differences between the scholars, right? Just the at the team level, right? How for instance, we do topic analysis, right? So we are taking out the topics, and we like to see how the discussion the topics of the discussion converges, right? Because and then the patterns of the convergence are different across the teams as well. So those kinds of things, and there are many things that we can look at, but yeah.
Thank you. Sounds super interesting. I wonder if there'd be anything anything to explore with respect to sort of how the groups are comprised, you know, based on sort of the actual disciplines that are represented. And
Yeah.
I don't know if you could sort of on a spectrum kind of from optimal to less optimal figure out kind of what makes you know, for a better more optimal interdisciplinary
that
team.
yeah, that's a really excellent point. So thank you. Yes. We will look into that.
Yeah, that's a very interesting because I assemble the teams and I look very closely all the self-statements and the journeys of all the scholars and put together people into teams and see how but it's a kind of a gut feeling how the teams are comprised. But eventually, as you have seen firsthand, they all come together despite very different disciplinary backgrounds and frameworks and even vocabularies. And it's a very interesting dynamic. You have experienced that personally, but what is fascinating for me is to see MJ's team convert that into quantifiable networks and semantic maps. So that has been a very fascinating. The one thing that struck out in an earlier paper is that engineers, in particular data scientists, tend to be quieter in the beginning inside of their teams, inside of the groups, but end up having to be very dominant nodes in the network towards the end. So it looks like the psychologists, the physicians, and all are pretty loud initially in expressing the problem and expressing themselves, but towards the end, the quiet engineers take over. It's a very interesting dynamic. So
I'd say that checks out. That aligns with my experience.
yeah,
Really
but we have
fascinating.
quantifiable data, and it applies broadly to team science. And team science is quite the essence of the modern research university because increasingly the silos are falling away. To us in digital health, it seems they're natural, but it's not like that. At all our universities, you'll recognize these very large silos where people are not talking across them. So I'm kind of fascinated by the M Health Institute, and you guys have gone through it, so you know firsthand how that convergence takes place and how nice and rich the convergence is when you leave. MJ, any other closing comments?
Yeah, that's all I have.
Great, wonderful. Thank you again for the work you do and your work on team science and for coming and sharing some of that, demystifying those graphs for us. And I thank you all from near and far with a shout out to Kat in, I think, where is she? In Switzerland now, based in Switzerland, for joining on this webinar. And we hope to see you next time.